My name is Bruce Krawisz, and I am a physician who studies the health effects of pollution and extreme weather. Thank you for listening to this video. There is also an online handout that goes with the video. The key point of this video is that we can create much healthier lives for ourselves and for others by completely eliminating fossil fuel combustion and substituting renewable energy for fossil energy. If we stop burning fossil fuels, we will stop almost all greenhouse gas emissions, and we will stop almost all air pollution. If we look at a wind turbine power plant compared to a natural gas power plant during their lifetime, and if we say that they generated the same amount of electricity, we can calculate that the greenhouse gas emissions of the wind turbine will be 97% less than the emissions of a natural gas power plant. I am a physician, as I said, and there is a group of public health physicians called the Lancet Commission on Health and Climate Change, who say that climate change is the greatest global health threat facing the world in this century. Now, this is a satellite weather map from the date September 15, 2020. So this was roughly a year ago. And the brown color that you see along the west and northern part of the United States is soot. And this is soot from burning forest fires. And I think everyone knows that extreme heat and drought in the West are causing many more forest fires, and those forest fires are so severe. And you can see that on this particular day, the soot from the forest fire involved possibly a third or a half of the states that make up the United States. Also, on the very same day, there were two hurricanes. You can see in the Atlantic Ocean, there is Hurricane Paulette, and in the Gulf of Mexico, just approaching Florida and Alabama, there is Hurricane Sally. When the ocean becomes warmer from hotter weather, hurricanes become more powerful. This is because hurricanes derive their energy from the heat that is within ocean water. So if we make the ocean warmer, we create more powerful hurricanes. The way this happens is that human activities release greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and these greenhouse gases produce hotter and more unstable weather. On Earth, the main greenhouse gases are water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. And human activities are increasing, directly or indirectly, the concentration of all four of the major greenhouse gases of Earth. And this means that we are storing more and more heat in the atmosphere because greenhouse gases are chemicals that absorb heat and store it. This is a slide from a meteorology website called Climate Central. It's one of the references in the handout, and I am using this slide with permission from the people who run Climate Central. And the line that is sort of an orange or red-orange color shows the average temperature of the lower atmosphere of the Earth. And from 1880 to 2017, this average temperature, it's called global mean surface temperature, has increased by about 1 degree centigrade, which is the same as 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit. So we have increased the average temperature of the Earth's atmosphere by about 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, the yellow line shows the increase in carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere caused by human activities. The main activity is the burning of fossil fuels. And you can see that the carbon dioxide concentration has increased from about 290 parts per million to about 410 parts per million. That was in 2017. Right now, the increase is about 420 parts per million. Another thing to consider is that when carbon dioxide increases in the atmosphere and the atmosphere warms, it causes more water vapor to be dissolved in the atmosphere. So carbon dioxide concentrations also regulate water vapor, and this is how indirectly human activities are increasing water vapor concentrations in the atmosphere. This is a photograph that was taken during the Western heat wave that occurred in June and July of 2021. This photograph was taken in a place called Furnace Creek, which is in Death Valley, California. And you can see that it was 130 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the same as 54 degrees centigrade. This was the hottest temperature ever recorded on Earth by a scientific instrument, according to the Yale Climate Communications information. There actually have been slightly hotter temperatures recorded, but never in a scientific manner. On July 9th, 2021, we recorded the hottest temperature ever recorded on Earth. I also would like to point out the temperatures in a small town in Canada called Lytton. You can see those to the side of the graph. On June 27th, this is a town in British Columbia, I should say, a small town. On June 27th, it was 116 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the hottest temperature ever recorded anywhere in Canada. Then on June 28th, it was 118 degrees in the same town, recorded using the same instruments. And that was, again, the hottest temperature ever recorded in all of Canada. And on June 29th, it was 121 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, for the third day in a row, the hottest temperature ever recorded in the history of Canada. And then on June 30th, no recording was made, and this is because the town had to be evacuated as a wildfire was approaching. So this is the sad story of a town called Lytton, British Columbia, in Canada. This is a slide that comes from the U.S. military health system. And this slide shows how common heat stroke is in the military, and it goes from the years 2007 to the years 2018. Now, in medicine, we have a special name for heat stroke. It's called hyperthermia, but the two mean the same thing. Usually on the news, you hear the term heat stroke, and there's a definition. It's if a person has a high fever, but they do not have an infection. So a temperature of 104 degrees Fahrenheit is the usual temperature for heat stroke. And this is what was used by the U.S. military health system. And I think you can see that over the 10-year period of these records, that heat stroke did not increase in the Air Force or Navy, but it became approximately twice as common in the Army and in the Marine Corps. So as temperatures warm, our soldiers suffer more from this hot weather. Another thing to consider is that I don't have data, but it's the same story for other outdoor workers. Just as an example, a farm worker in the United States, an outdoor farm worker, is 20 times more likely to die from heat stroke than the average citizen in the United States. So heat stroke is one of the dangers of extreme weather. Now this is a slide that shows a listing of problems caused by extreme heat and extreme weather. And I realize that you can't see the entire thing because of my picture, but the part that's hidden says declining seafood harvests. And there are three arrows, three thin arrows that I wanted to point out. They say more drought, more flood, and extreme heat. These three arrows together will cause a decline in agriculture. And that is a great danger that the world faces from extreme weather. Then there are three thick arrows, more droughts, more floods, and toxic blooms. Let me explain what a toxic bloom is. A toxic bloom is when water that is unusually warm also becomes filled with nutrients, and this causes a very rapid increase in the growth of bacteria or algae. And you may have heard of toxic blooms recently occurring in Florida, along the coast of Florida, and they're called red tides because they turn the water red. Every toxic bloom does not turn the water red, but the ones in Florida do because they're caused by a particular algae. Now, toxic blooms and floods and droughts take away fresh water and make it more difficult for people to obtain drinking water. You might not think that floods would take water away from people, but actually they do because floodwaters are ordinarily contaminated by sewage and by poisonous chemicals from the petroleum industry and by manure. And so when there's a flood, there might be more water, but this water is not suitable for drinking. This is a graph that comes from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and this shows the global mean surface temperature, which, again, as I said before, it's the temperature of the lower part of the atmosphere, the temperature where we live, and it goes from 1880 to 2016, and during that time, the average temperature of the Earth atmosphere has increased by, as I said before, about 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 1 degree centigrade. And right now, the temperature is increasing at the rate of 0.2 of a degree centigrade per decade, which is the same as 0.3 of a degree Fahrenheit per decade. And this is for the entire Earth atmosphere, including the atmosphere over ocean water. Now, this graph shows what will happen if temperatures continue to increase at the same rate. And if that happens, then by 2040, we will have increased the temperature of Earth to about 1.5 degrees centigrade, which is the same as 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is a prediction that's based on continuing to do what we do now. This is another prediction. This comes from a very large study that was done by the National Oceanic Administration, and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. And this study is called the Fourth National Climate Assessment. And the green line, which is the middle line, shows the Paris Climate Agreement. If we follow the Paris Climate Agreement, we can stay below 2 degrees centigrade increase, and that would be about the same as 550 parts per million in CO2 concentration. So we would have to reduce fossil fuel use and keep the CO2 concentration at 550. Now, if we do nothing, then we get the red line, which you can see by 2100 would be a 4-degree increase in the average temperature of the Earth, which is 7 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 degrees centigrade, 7 degrees Fahrenheit. And if this would happen, just think of this, it would be too hot to grow corn in Iowa during the summer. So it would be a phenomenal change in our weather. This is another study I'd like to show you just very briefly. It's called Net Zero, and it was done by Princeton University. And this study says that if we stop burning coal, stop using gasoline for transportation, and stop burning natural gas, that we can save 270,000 American lives between now and 2050. I'll also mention that the World Health Organization says that each year 4.2 million people die from air pollution. Most of this air pollution comes from the burning of fossil fuels. And most of the deaths occur in India and China, where the pollution is terrible. I just want to end with a brief statement from the International Energy Association. And what this statement says is that right now, about 90% of the new energy projects are renewable energy. And this is a very positive statement. In the year 2020, about 90% of the new energy projects were renewable energy. And this is exactly what we need. And this is also the end of my video. Thank you very much for listening.